My name's Danny. I'm an alcoholic, and it's great to be here. Had a great day today as a gift of being sober. Spent the day at the beach with my 3 grandkids, to hear my 6-year-old tell me today's one of the greatest days of his life. It's just things like that are priceless, and that's a result of recovery. So there's no question about that. So tonight we're going to talk about 4, 5, and 6, and then next week 7, 8, and 9, which really are the bread and butter of the program. I mean, this is where the change is going to occur in you to actually allow you to be catapulted into the 4th dimension, as they like to say. And it is really, it's unbelievable that how important it is to really, really effectively do this work. So, but in order to get there, we had to do, which, we went through. It's actually 2 weeks ago. You have to accept the fact. I have no illusion about the fact that I could drink a drug safely anymore. I just don't have a problem with that. I know I can't. I've accepted that. That became apparent through my story and my acceptance of what it led me to. And that's up to each individual to acknowledge that. And I also got to the point where I was hopeless. I according to what the book was telling me, I could not recover based on my own initiative, and I needed to find a power. And I didn't know that, I didn't know what did that mean and so forth. So the second step, I just had to, come to believe that I needed to find a power. I didn't have the power yet. I just needed to believe that. And it was really at that point is where you really get to the point where you say, well, what do I do? How do I find this power? And that's what 4 through 9 is about. So 3 really just is really making a prayerful third step that I'm going to be willing to go through whatever it takes to find that power. And why don't I have that power? And for me, I know my story. So sometimes when you're coming to do something like this, I want to sound good and I'm going to quote the book and all this type of stuff. But that doesn't really mean nothing. It doesn't mean nothing. Besides, I can't quote it anyway. So, no, I know certain passages and so forth. But what was so important to me, and I believe this is early on, to recognize that what is it I was trying to do? I was trying to find a power greater than myself. And why couldn't I find that power? And early on in We Agnostics on page 55, it basically told us that, in the final analysis, you will find him deep within you. Which is really the analysis. So why can't I find that power? Why am I missing that power that's in me? And that's what we're going to start to do. We needed to take a 4th step inventory, which any business, as the book tells us, needs to do that. And I needed to start analyzing my inventory. Now, there's a couple of things that go on here. When you're brand new, okay, you probably have no idea what you're doing, in essence. And you need to have a sponsor to help you go through this process. But what I would tell you, and I used to tell many people that I sponsored, don't get stuck there, man. Just follow what it tells you to do. And what it really tells you to do is there's 4 categories: resentments, fears, harms to others, and sex relationships, and just list them down. And it tells us to go down this way. Just, so resentments. Who am I resentful for? Okay? Don't start trying to figure it out. Don't start worrying about who I got to tell about it later on. Most of us have a list. And here's the answer. I love my friend Paul, which a lot of people know, Irish Paul, likes to say his story about the 4th step. When he came into the room, everybody was like, there's Paul, the man, the greatest 4th step that was ever written. So that means nothing. Okay, you need to do as best you can with whatever you can. You got to remember when you first came in here, and I'm a firm believer into getting involved in this fairly quickly as soon as the fog lifts. You should get, and that, if you read the books, they tell you they were doing this in days, weeks, starting this process. So I'm going to listen to what they said. So you need to get into that. So your first time you do this, you're probably not going to remember everything you need to remember. But it's typical. I mean, most people, for me, it was, the wife, the kids, my brother, friends, co-workers, and just start listing as many as I can down. Okay, what was I resentful for? Well, my wife left me, took the kids away from me, was with another guy, but that guy's on the list, obviously. I've always had a problem with that guy. They used to say, pray for him. And I used to say, I am praying for him. I pray that he goes to heaven today. And so, that's just the way it was. So. But it just tells us, and I'm a firm believer, and I was gifted in the fact that I had lost everything. I couldn't feed myself. I was in Graymore. Many people know my story. So it was very easy for me to say, my life was at stake. So I'm going to do everything it takes. So I didn't have a job and nowhere to live. So, there wasn't other things that were pending for me. So I might as well just start working on this. And I remember even 7 weeks in Graymore, 6 weeks in a rehab. I always remembered the guy in the rehab, Charlie Collins, out in Creedmoor. If there's any alumni that know him, great man. Said, and this was the first time as you start awakening, even if you're early on, you start hearing things you never heard before. Rarely have we seen a person fail who's thoroughly followed up path. Oh, thoroughly, that's a good one. I need to thoroughly do it. And then the big one for me was half measures will avail you nothing. Okay, so I had to take away doing only what I wanted to do. I'm going to do what it says to do. And then I started doing that. So I started listing them down that way, and then you list the events, whatever it is. I'm resentful for my wife because, my wife took the kids away, upstate away from me, slapped me with a subpoena, a lot of things. Divorced me, took money from me. We're not getting to my part yet. So, but, this is what I need to do is start listing down. The guy, the job, fired me, wouldn't sign the unemployment form for me, the fact that I walked off the job, but, those type of things. As whatever you got, I don't know what your story is, but for me it was about that, and just listing them down. And then the book teaches us, to just start identifying what is it about that event that is bothering you. Does it affect your self-esteem? Is it affecting your personal ambition, your sex relations? The book lays it out. I know for me, Joe and Charlie tapes were instrumental in helping me. I became a bit of a fanatic, so I was reading everything, guides and this and that, and I had nothing else to do, so that's what I was doing. So, but that was a blessing for me. And then eventually, even though the book don't have it, a lot of people will tell you to have a fourth column, which is then basically you're going to start, well, what was your part in it? And then also the part about... Now, I believe, for me, what started to happen... I'm a firm... People have heard me use the term spiritual cholesterol. Okay? Now, we all know what regular cholesterol is when you have blockage in your arteries. It doesn't allow your body to perform at peak capacity. You're run down. You're slowed down. So we don't want to have that. So they have medication for that, or eat right and do that type of stuff. But spiritual cholesterol is when you have clogs in your spiritual channel that is not allowing you to touch base with the inner power, which I believe that, the kingdom of God is within you, okay? And so why aren't I blocking? So am I self-centered? Am I controlling? Am I passive-aggressive? Am I dishonest? Do I have envy problems? Every one of those creates a block within you. So to me, I started realizing that I need to get rid of these blocks, okay? And if I don't find out what blocks I need to get rid of, how is that going to occur? And I believe as you start doing the process, I'm an unabashed believer that there is a God within every person in here. Okay, whether you believe it or not, I believe it, and I'm a firm believer in that God is trying to get out of you to help other people, to be of maximum service to him, her, whatever you want to call it, and others. And so he's like trying to chip his way out. And I have them blocked in because I am self-centered, and that's how I'm living my life. So every time I can chip a little bit of that away, a little spark comes through, okay? And it's like, and all of a sudden I get a glimpse of that heaven, or whatever you want to call it. And I've had many of these moments. And so I believe what happens is when you start experiencing that, you really do want to do the work that's necessary to chip away. So now I will also tell you, from my experience, doing the fourth step at one particular point was very painful. When I started analyzing what I had really done to people, my children, how I had deprived them of money, where I was, at the time being before I was just homeless and just abandoned them altogether, spending money over the bar when they had nothing at home, and showing you their pictures of how beautiful my kids are, and depriving my wife of my tremendous company, No, just in general, withholding sex, demanding sex, all of those type of things. I mean, the sex relations, it's a tough issue for a lot of us. I know it is for me. So, pretty much growing up, my relationships with all females, was basically about sex. That's really what it was. And it was all about getting it, giving it, and what have you, and self-centered. It was about pleasure, and I know that. So I had to put all that down in paper. But when you start recognizing these type of things an amazing, for me at first what happens, it was very overwhelming how painful it was of what a bad, there was a lot about me that was not very good. Many of us think we come in here, we have a drinking problem, put away the drink and everything's going to be fine. But the book was telling me that's not good enough. I need to find a power greater than myself, so I need to do a thorough inventory about that. Now, I became a little bit, because I was over the top now. I was starting to gain this stuff. So during my inventory, I recommend 100% do exactly what the book tells you. But for me, I also did a lot of reading. I read Pass It On, Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers, all of the AA books, and they started mentioning other people, William James, A Variety of Religious Experiences, which is, I don't know if anybody's ever read that, very difficult book to read, but it started talking about that the salvation of society will be the individual awakening that occurs in people. And he goes on to, they talk about this, Bill and all of them talk about this. So me being the addict that I am, I went out and got the book and started reading that book. They mentioned Carl Jung. I got a book on, I don't know if you ever read Carl Jung, that's not too easy to read. But that's where I was at. I was on fire for recovery. Now my sponsor had told me early on, pray for enthusiasm, okay? Be enthusiastic about what you're doing here. So that's the way I went after my fourth step. Now, enthusiasm, if anybody knows, enthuso means God within, which I didn't know at the time. I've learned that since. There actually was a group in the 14th century called the Enthusiasts that all believed that they would have meetings and God would raise up and one of them would speak at a meeting. So this is what happened to me. I became obsessed with trying to understand what the hell happened to me. And it was great for me. I remember I became a doorman, and I had a lot of time. While I was in a halfway house, I was able to read a lot. I was going down to the bookstore in the city called the Paraclete, and I'd be going in there, and I'm ordering all these, John of the Cross, all these unbelievable books. I'd read, and believe me, the big book is the main staple, and I was doing that. But I'm a firm believer. As I was doing my inventory, I recognized something very important to me, that I was one unloving son of a bitch in everything, and it all boiled down to that. So I needed to find out what was love. What was love? So for me, one of the greatest books that helped change my life was The Road Less Traveled, okay, besides the big book, okay? The Road Less Traveled clearly talked about what love was, and I still use that definition today, which is the willingness to extend oneself for the purpose of nurturing either someone else's or your own spiritual growth. And I abide by that. So it means that I'm willing not to be looking out for me. I'm looking, unless it's my spiritual path. And so every time I deal with somebody, I should be looking out in a loving manner to them. And I'm a believer in love and service. That's what Scripture teaches us. And when I looked at my stuff that I put down, there was not a lot of love and service on there, okay? There was a lot of self-gratification for Dan, screw you, you get it my way. And so to me, that's what the inventory was. And I also remember, I like to always say, because I kept going to this bookstore and getting all these books, and the lady finally said to me, are you a priest? Because I'm reading all these books, and I'm like, no, I'm the doorman down the block. You're ordering St. Augustine, Thomas Merton. This is where I was at. I'm not saying you have to do that, but I became an avid, ferocious reader. I started learning also, my little saying here, thoughts becomes things, choose the good ones. All of this started happening to me, and I became on fire for the program. And this was many, many years ago, and I still have a tremendous enthusiasm for the program. It's a lifetime job doing inventory. Again, if you're brand new, do it exactly as it says and just get through it. Don't wait for anything to happen, because what happens to you is God will take hold. Whether you want to call it God, power, universal mind, doesn't matter, okay? But some power greater than you will take hold of you and help you get through the process. And then when you finally go through the first phase and do all the steps, which we'll talk more about, you start rereading these, and now you see them with a whole different perspective from a God-centered eye, and now all of a sudden those same pages mean a lot more. So, it's just like a never-ending thing. So I went through that whole process, and I met, just like it said, with my sponsor, so I had all my inventory written down and so forth, and then I got to the point where now I needed, as it says in the book, we need to tell somebody about it, okay? It's no good to keep it in your head. Okay, and that's action. It's sometimes it's not that easy, to maybe mention some things to somebody else that you did, maybe some sexual things or what you did to your children and your wife and what you did and this and that. But remember, spiritual cholesterol. Every one of those things that you keep inside yourself that you don't share with another person is a block. I got to be rid of the blocks. I must get rid of these blocks, and that's how I get rid of them. So I did that, just like it said in the book. So I met with a sponsor, and you have that conversation. Now, it doesn't always go exactly as it's, there's no script on that. It depends on your sponsor, who it is. Sometimes you might meet with a therapist, you might meet with a priest, whatever. So, but you meet with somebody and you have that conversation, and usually if it's somebody, it should be somebody who has actually gone through the steps. That's usually helpful. Don't do it with the mechanic down the block. And they'll share some things with you, probably. It's hard to say how it goes. I believe when two or three are gathered together, there's a spirit that's there. And usually it's not only helpful for you, it's helpful for them. So I've been on both sides of them. So, a good sponsor usually listens a lot when they let you talk and this and that, and then we'll come in. And then there's a freedom that comes. Now, the freedom will only really come because then you're going to morph into the sixth step, which is, they say in the 12 and 12, the step that separates the men from the boys and the women from the girls, so forth. Because really, I could really take a look at my inventory and do all it and talk about it and say, you know what? I'm not really that bad. I don't need to change. I'll change that, but I'm not changing that. And so 6, though, is one when you really, typically 6 and 7 is only like 2 paragraphs in the book about it. But the way the book tells you is after you have done the 5th step with somebody, okay, you should go home. You should sit down. You should reflect on what has been spoken about. Now, I'm a firm believer if you're doing the right thing, God is revealing himself to you right now. So you've been convicted. I know I was convicted big time. And I start changing. And the thing that we're hoping that occurs is you don't want to be that person anymore. You don't want to be that son of a bitch. You want to be somebody who's actually free, somebody who cares about somebody who helps people, somebody who's willing to extend themselves for the purpose of someone else. And so 6 really is a very simple, people could get tied up overly, but we're ready at this point to change. I'm ready to change. I'm ready not to be that person anymore. It's hard not to talk about 7 without 6. But at 7, you really, you're going to ask God to help you with that. It kind of goes together. But you really want to change the person that you are. And I'm a firm believer that as this is occurring, the freedom that you will have will be unbelievable. But it's not complete yet because you still haven't really gone through, because if you did your 4th step correctly, you have the harms list of people that you have harmed. And eventually, I believe the final consummation of the freedom occurs when I can finally look another person in the eye and say, I'm really sorry for what I did, and actually mean it, and make restitution when it's needed. So, but we'll talk about that next week. So at this particular point, I'm really, I'm at the point where I'm really, really willing. I don't want to be that person anymore. I really don't. And then eventually, that's why I like to say, if you're new in this program, analyzing is paralyzing. There is no question about it. I'm going to figure it all out and this and that. Just take the pen out, man. Get the columns out. Boom. List the people down. What's the issue? Look at whether it was, self-ambition, sex relations, whatever it is. Write them down. and then with the help of a sponsor, try to look at your point, your part of it. For me, a big part of it, there will be people on that list that I didn't really do all that much to, but I have a resentment for them. So so how do we deal with that? Forgiveness. I need to forgive them. How do I do that? Okay, I know for me, I had to listen to tapes about forgiveness. I did. I read books and The Art of Love, Forgiveness, and the big book touches it all. But I needed extra help. So, and it really, I think in the book it talks about I needed to come to the place to realize that if I truly believe that God is in every one of you, okay, there's something in you that's blocked, that you're blocked from your spirit if you've done something to harm me. And I as Emmett Fox says, I need to see the Christ in you. I need to see the Christ in you. I need to focus on that, and I need to let go of that. Because by letting go, I'm freeing myself. Okay? I need to free myself. So people that you can't, not everybody, there are people that have harmed us that we didn't do anything for. I need to let go. I need to forgive. The more I carry that resentment, I'm poisoning myself. So that was important. And a good sponsor will help you with that. So that helped me a great deal with that. So again, I just like to point out, follow the way the book talks about it. It has freed me up into an unbelievable life. I mean, I've been, for you people don't know, I've been sober for over 25 years. I still am enthusiastic about it. I do a lot of things to help people on the side. I do things on my own for free. That, if anybody knows, I send out some messages, I do certain things that help me. It helps me every day to send something out that helps other people. And every person I meet in my life, whether it's in recovery or outside recovery, I try to have a smile on my face and be kind. And that makes me better. And then, again, when you go through this process, eventually 10, 11, and 12 is this whole continuing process of continue to take inventory, and I believe if you've been awakened, which is really painful at times, like that you have a little confrontation with somebody and this and that, and you really want to dig into a good resentment, you really want to hold on and zing them a little bit, but what happens is if you've been awakened, you can't live with it. It's like, shit, I used to say that to my son. Why is it always me? How come I'm the one who has to say I'm sorry? Do you want to be free? Yes. Well, yeah. So just let it go. Let it go. And let it go the right way, Now, does that mean that I need to hang out with people that annoy me? No. I don't. No. So, I mean, it's easy to be holy on a mountaintop. And the problem with this world is the people. We know that. So, but I need to live among you guys. So, but the bottom line is, if you're I became an avid reader. So I love New Thought thinkers and all that type of stuff. So Emmett Fox talks about the Golden Key, all this type of stuff, and it's great stuff to really just focus on the Christ in somebody and the good. And you'd be surprised. You kill somebody with kindness, how all of a sudden they disarm. They disarm. And I mean, that all comes in time. I really believe, again, if you're brand new, just go through the process. Let the Spirit take hold of you, and then the Spirit will guide you into a place that will bring you into a freedom and a peace and joy that is what the book promises, and is unbelievable. So that's enough. Thanks a lot.